talking college sports in the Deep South where college football is king. And we would like to think the SEC is the best conference in all of college football and that the SEC West is the best sub-conference. Once again, it's K-Stu the GOAT for Vernon Speak Sports. We're mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. Let's go ahead and get the comment section active. YouTube War Eagle. Now, Auburn has actually been, Auburn is a charter member of the SEC. Now, the SEC obviously having a storied history with Alabama, Florida, Auburn, LSU, Georgia winning the national championship as well. Several national champions out of the SEC, especially more recently with the dynasty, the ridiculous dynasty that's going on right now at the University of Alabama under the great coach Nick Saban. Now, this argument can kind of go a couple of different ways, all right? So I say this in my intro, that I would like to think that the SEC West is the best sub-conference, and arguably that may be the case. But when I look at the SEC West versus the SEC East, there are several items that I tend to kind of think about. Number one, the SEC East does not have a single in-state conference rival, okay? South Carolina has Clemson, but Clemson's in the ACC. Georgia has Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech is in the ACC as well. Florida has, in the past, Miami and Florida State, both of whom are in the ACC. Oddly enough, Tennessee does not have... I was wrong about that. Tennessee and Vanderbilt are in the same state, but of course just not a huge rivalry with a lot of consequence. So you have one, but it's just not a huge rivalry, you know. Also, you got Kentucky and Louisville, but Louisville, of course, is in the ACC. So you don't have a lot of in-state rivals that are in conference. Okay, that's one thing you got to look at. The rivalries, just at least as of recent, have just not been intense for a lot of reasons. You have, coaching, lack of upgrades coaching-wise. That's starting to kind of come around with Dan Mullen at Florida. Of course, Will Muschamp at South Carolina. Starting, hopefully will give Georgia a challenge here pretty soon and be a force as it was in the early 2010s for the South Carolina Gamecocks. But when you think about the intensity of the rivalries in the SEC West, you're talking Alabama, and they interconnect with one another. First of all, you have the Alabama and LSU rival. That is huge. Alabama and Mississippi State. You have Auburn and LSU. That at times is just as big a rivalry as Auburn and Alabama. You have Auburn and Mississippi State. Auburn is developing a nice rivalry with Texas A&M. Arkansas, kind of, sort of. And, I'm usually just not entertained by the Auburn and Ole Miss game. But just so many interconnecting rivalries. You have also Texas A&M and Arkansas. Texas A&M is developing a nice rivalry with LSU. So it's just so many interconnections rivalry-wise in the SEC West that just makes it a little bit more, in my opinion, just a little bit more entertaining than the SEC East. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the SEC East, because of coaching upgrades, is definitely on the upswing as far as being way, way more competitive than they have in the past. We look, Kentucky emerged last season, reached as high as, I want to say, number 11 in the country. They were pretty good. I think they ran Benny Snell a little bit more than they should have. Probably could have diversified their offense a little bit more, but nonetheless, the folks in Lexington, Kentucky had a lot of reason to be excited about what was happening in the Bluegrass State. So, as we go into 2019, this is going to be a very critical year for the SEC. Obviously, the SEC conference pretty much dominated the recruiting trail. Several SEC teams in the top 5 recruiting wise. So that's huge for the Auburn Tigers. I mean, it's huge for the SEC because those recruiting classes really do start to add up after a while. When you start to see the talent and see the impact, is just very, very phenomenal for the SEC. So, I can make the argument that the SEC West may not be the best, but for me personally, the SEC West is the more entertaining sub-conference in football because I enjoy the rivals. They're very close in proximity to one another. You have these in-state rivalries, and you have a lot of overlap as far as, like I said before, LSU and Arkansas have a great rivalry. Texas A&M is really, really acclimating themselves well into the SEC West culture. They have the fan bases are incredible. The fan bases travel well. Most of the teams in the SEC West have great venues stadium wise, so that so you have a larger fan base for the SEC West. I mean, you look at the SEC East. Kentucky and Vanderbilt are largely, and Missouri. We can't discount Missouri. Missouri is just way out of the way. At least although Texas A&M is far, but it's kind of on the path, and it's worth the trip. But Missouri is like, man, and usually when you do play Missouri, it's going to be at 12 o'clock in the morning out there. So it just makes for a real interesting setup rivalry-wise in the SEC East. Like I said before, this is very arguable, guys. I mean, I want y'all to get in the comment section and tell me what you all think about the SEC East versus the SEC West. I just, like I said before, with being an Auburn fan and just seeing the interconnectivity of the rivalries in the SEC West, to me, is just more entertaining. Once again, it's K-Su the GOAT for Vernon Speak Sports. We're mostly talking Auburn football. YouTube, you know the deal. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, like, comment. Please get the comment section active. I'm not always right about this stuff, but hey, I'm entitled. I talk about my interpretation of SEC football, and I really like the SEC West. Those rivals are very intense. Again, go ahead and comment, subscribe to the channel. Just click that bell on the side if you want to be notified. Click the bell twice. It will tell you every time I come on and talk about these Auburn Tigers. Fearless and true, gang. Until next time, War Eagle.